SAS programming challenges in ISS and ISE studies having different coding versions. Different coding versions. Now here we'll consider the same studies A to L, 12 studies to be pulled. ISS is integrated summary of safety. ISA is integrated summary of effectiveness or efficacy. SGTM and ADAM data standards wherever relevant. Now the problem here is having different coding versions. Now different AE coding, versioning, MEDRA and concomitant medication dictionaries. Now since we have 12 different studies, it's quite possible they will not be using the same MEDRA versions. Like say some studies that were conducted 5 years before or say 2 years before, the MEDRA versions number they keep changing. Say for example, you have Microsoft Office. The versions keep changing, the technology keeps changing as and when the time passes, right? In the same way, the versioning of meta coding, especially into adverse events or medical history, then concomitant medications and all these factors, especially the domains, they keep changing. So studies will have different meta versions, right? And some AEs are not coded or coded differently. So say for example, I have 12 different studies, right, that I need to combine into one ISS and ISC study. So what happens, like in some few of the studies, one or two studies, the coding was not done, right? There was no system of implementing the meta version, and there was nothing mentioned in the statistical analysis plan. So how to overcome this problem? So the solution here is to recode to a target meta, for example version 25 to 25.1. So using the original verbatim terms and map with the selected meta dictionary. Maintain mapping logs and flag terms with ambiguous mapping for clinical review. So say in few studies version 20 was used, in some study 22 was used, or in another studies version 24 was used. So whenever you write the statistical analysis plan for an ISS or ISC study, you need to mention very clearly, especially for the adverse event coding, then the coding for the concomitant medication, which is WHO. So all these kind of dictionaries, what version you are going to use, right? Either the latest or you are going to use whichever is the accurate one, especially in the as compared to the earlier 12 studies. So that mentioning of coding version is very important, especially in all terms, be it medical history, then adverse events, then concomitant medication, all these things, it needs to be mentioned very clearly. Then after recoding this into, so let's see another example as to how we can implement in real world scenario. So the scenario here is, say, studies A to E, they were coded with MEDRA version 22, whereas studies F to L, they were coded with version 25. One study who coded WHO ART. Now the steps here is, you can extract AE underscore decoded with preferred term, LLT, system organ class and MEDRA version. Now you have 12 different studies, right? So what you need to do, for each and every study, you will have an adverse event domain. So in that domain, you need to select this specific columns, and then you need to append either vertically or horizontally, whichever is logically possible, looking into how the data is collected and how the data is actually maintained, right, in different studies. So you need to extract that for one study, then second study, and then you can append those all these data into one. Then you can use dictionary lookup to map verbatim to the target preferred term. So for WHO ART map to MEDRA, we have crosswalk tables wherever applicable. Then you can create the variable which is target one, and then you can map status equal to map ambiguous or missing. So say for example, in one study the MEDRA version 22 was used, while we are going to use version 25 in the ISS study. So what happens is, different adverse event verbatim terms, they were coded with the earlier data. So now that AE system organ class that has been changed as per the new version. So you need to mention the original, what was the verbatim, then what was coded in that specific study, then what are you going to code as per the new version number, right, in the ISS study. So all these variables you need to keep, so that in future if you want to see the traceability, so you can check back at as to what was coded in the earlier study and what is now coded. Looking also into the version number also, data you always try to ensure that you keep in that specific data set whenever you are trying to do this. Now again, whenever you're doing any coding or for any terms like CM, AE or MH, so these coding, especially the SAS programmers and biostatistician, they don't do. This is not under the job profile of any SAS programmer or biostatistician. The coding for all this adverse events coding, verbatim text, it comes under the data management team, which is into the medical team, the medical coder or the medical writer. So we'll have a department called as a medical coder or a medical writer. So that medical writer, they will have a specific software, so as to how to select that specific verbatim term, and you need to select what version needs to be implemented, and then check, like, what is the system organ class preferred term, the lower term and the higher term. So all these kind of terms software they you need to pick in, and that's how they need to do. Now imagine you have a 12 different studies, different versions are there. For some studies the coding is not done, so it's again a daunting and a time consuming and, like, very tiring kind of a job, especially for a medical coder who does this kind of coding, right? But then when it comes to the SAS programming or a biostatistician, to work on the ISS study, if you come across that out of 12 studies, only two studies for whom coding is not done. So for those two studies, you need to inform to your specific department, the data management or the medical coder, whosoever is the concerned person to do the coding, saying that these two studies are not coded. So how should we proceed? So now it is the headache and responsibility of the medical coder to ensure that for those two studies they do the coding as per the version that is mentioned in the ISS and ISE statistical analysis plan, and that's how you get that data, and then you can combine and you can map. So the SAS hint here is you can use hash join or SQL to merge verbatim to dictionary lookup table, and also keep the source codes for audit. Source codes in the sense like what was coded in the single individual 12 studies, you need to keep that the original coding as to what version was used. Even if it is not coded, you keep those values as blank for that specific variable if the coding is not done in those studies. And then what is the actual coding done based on the latest version that is mentioned in the ISS and ISE SAP. So all these materials data you need to keep, so that in future if you want to see the traceability of data, or if anybody wants to do the audit purpose, so that you can do, and it becomes very easy and very flexible enough to move the data forward and backward, and to check like everything is looking systematically. Many thanks for watching my video and happy learning. Please like, share, subscribe, leave a feedback comment. Many thanks for your support and having great connection.